This is the Jabberjaw Podcast Network. Visit jabberjawmedia.com for more shows like this one.
What's up? It's your main man, Doc Coyle. I am your X-Man, and this is the X-Man Podcast. Thank you for listening. You'll probably notice from the intro, as well as the intro on the previous episode, that I have joined a podcast network called Jabberjaw Media, and that was through my buddy Mike Mowry from Outer Loop Management, and it has a whole bunch of awesome podcasts on there and shows that I've been on as a guest, and I listened to one called 100 Words or Less with Ray Harkins, which I was a guest on, the Metal Sucks podcast, which I was a frequent guest on, and the old hosts from that actually have a new show called The Metal Podcast, and hopefully I'll get to go on there and bust their balls. Mike himself actually has two shows on there, one called O Marks the Spot, which is the Outer Loop podcast itself, and they also have one called Managemental, where he co-hosts with Blasco of Rob Zombie and Ozzy Osbourne fame, who's also a manager of huge bands like Black Veil Brides and Zakk Wylde. And there's a bunch of other great shows on there. Lead Singer Syndrome with Shane Told, the Bad Christian podcast, Break It Down with Matt Carter, Modern Vinyl, whole lot of stuff. So it's definitely a big move for this show to link up with, a network and hopefully get more promotion and, just kind of make this thing a little more professional. But I'm really excited about that. I want to thank them. Really looking forward to working with them. And you can check out all the podcasts I mentioned and more on www.jabberjawmedia.com. That's JABBERJAWMEDIA.com. The guest we have this week is an old friend of mine named Benny Horowitz. He's the drummer for a very, very popular band called the Gaslight Anthem. I know him from my old hardcore scene days, Jersey guy, and just an overall good dude. Really proud of the success he's had, because he's just worked so long in music. He had a band called the Low End Theory and another band called the Killing Gift and all kinds of different projects, and he stuck with it. And it's really incredible to see the kind of success. And I know I've had so many kind of just people in the same metal scene on this show. I really want to start expanding and get different people from different genres. And so even if you are a metal person, I definitely think you'll enjoy this conversation. And one other thing I should probably bring up is Benny and I were supposed to do this in person when I was back in New Jersey, but we had a scheduling conflict, so I actually ended up doing this on Skype. And it's my first Skype interview. I prefer to do these in person, but I don't want to let that hinder me from getting a good show together. So I was experimenting with some things, so you might actually hear my microphone spike sometimes or distort, and that's just something I'm working with. Hopefully I will have that figured out by the next episode. So I apologize for any inconsistencies with the audio. I really go out of my way to make the show sound good. So enjoy this conversation with myself and Benny Horowitz of the Gaslight Anthem. Anyway, so we have my good friend, my old friend, Mr. Benny Horowitz of the band Gaslight Anthem on the X-Man Pod. Say hello to the podcast fans.
Yo, what's up, everyone? How you doing?
So, Benny and I came up together in the New Jersey hardcore scene.
We can even go specific. Central Jersey hardcore.
Central Jersey. It was a different vibe in North Jersey, right? I don't know if we
and South Jersey, who didn't even exist.
Well, the thing that used to piss me off was people who would like be from North Jersey or South Jersey or from Philly, and then they would go to Rutgers and be like,
Oh.
we're a New Brunswick band. I'm like, no, you're not.
No, you're not. You guys were literally the only New Brunswick band, I think, maybe ever.
That was
right?
probably true. Me and my brother actually went to New Brunswick High School.
Yeah.
Well, went to public schools, obviously, until essentially we were teenagers, But yeah, grew up there, and then we rehearsed when we first met was literally like on the border of New Brunswick and Franklin, so that was about as close as you could be to being a real New Brunswick band. But it's a point of pride. But I'm not gonna bust people's balls too much. At least we had some representation,
I think you should. You should put some respect on that. That doesn't happen too often down there. But all right, so in your interpretation, though, like I hear this all the time. What is Central Jersey to you geographically?
Well, if you were to be technical, you could probably say anything from probably like basically Middlesex County to like Trenton is probably technically if you were to look at it on a map. But to me, Central Jersey was that area. Like Somerset County and Middlesex County would be Central Jersey to me.
Right.
Like
not even Union County.
I guess that technically counts, but to me, almost like Newark. Once you got to Newark, you were on the verge of being in North Jersey.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then if you lived in like Bergen County, you lived in like Albany. I didn't even know where that was when I was a kid.
Yeah, that was like not until I got a car where I could actually drive and like go. It's like, ooh, this is crazy. Up here
like,
in the
what?
sticks.
God forbids playing a Knights of Columbus and Hohokus. I'll be there.
I don't think we did that. I remember we played this place. Like we would almost never play North Jersey until like I think one time we played Connections.
Oh.
And then one time, and then that place, the Rec Room. You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Did you go to that Dillinger, Candiria, ISIS show that we played there at the Rec Room?
No, I didn't.
The show got shut down when Candiria was playing because it was like some fire hazard or some shit. It wasn't because of knuckleheads like that the shows you'd usually get shut down.
I don't remember Candiria shows being too bad.
No, it wasn't that.
It's tough guys.
It was something that had nothing to really do with the show or something. Maybe they just put too many people in there. I don't know. I don't remember. But the show got shut down. That was a common theme, though, of shows getting shut down.
Oh, yeah. I got a whole cymbal case stolen at Connections. Lost 4 cymbals at that place.
4 cymbals. Were they broken or were they like pristine, brand new?
Couple cracks, but I mean, I was playing Connections, bro. This was way before I could just like replace a cymbal. That was the problem when that happened. That took me like I don't know how many pizzas I had to deliver to rebuy that sack of cymbals.
Well, I think that's probably the burden of being a drummer. Like, it's the worst. You guys have it the worst. You have to move the most gear, spend the most money. You get the least amount of attention. If you fuck up, everything fucks up. Being a drummer aside, how did you end up getting involved in the hardcore scene in New Jersey?
I mean, I guess loose affiliations with people. I had started skating before that. I'd met a kid in 6th grade named Steve Lawson, who we actually met in 6th grade drum corps in the band, school band. And he's a punk rock kid. His brother Dave had done the cover art for the first Shades Apart record, for Uniform Choice, Screaming for Change. He did some cover art. So when my friend Steve was like a little kid, he's getting taken to shows. And by the time I met him when we were like 11, 12 years old, he had been like crowd surfing and vision shows and stuff since he was like 8. And
8?
Yeah, literally, like went to those shows, and everyone knew him as like Little Steve, and he was like known in that scene because he was so tiny and such a ripper and knew everybody.
He had a chest tattoo at 9 years old.
Dude, 9, it was crazy. Big eagle. Yeah, so he made me some stuff at that point, and then playing drums actually sort of like got me into some stuff because when I first got asked to play in my first band, I was really still into like classic rock and grunge. I would say I was closer to like an alternative kid than a punk kid. And I started playing in this band. It was called Dilemma. And a couple of those guys in the band too were on some hardcore stuff. And once that band started playing, we kind of started playing in the local hardcore scene. And that really opened my eyes once we started playing these shows and connecting with bands and little scenes from other towns and stuff like that. And it was like a good like year or two kicking around in these basements and playing these local shows till we even went to New Brunswick for a show. I mean, our scene was really like small, and there was like 10 just good local punk and hardcore bands that would kick around. And yeah, and that was my initial entry. And I just I fell for it hard, man. You know, it was a similar time in my family where things were getting fucked up. Family split up, and I was looking for something, and I found something, you know?
Yeah, the band you were in when I met you, or I imagine that the band was active when I met you, was the Low End Theory. And was that like your first band that did actual stuff, you know, put out records and tour and do things?
Yeah, I had some bands in high school that had managed to get like 7 inches out and stuff, you know, but only played out of state a couple times. The Low End Theory was the first band that like got signed, like went to a studio, went on tour, like, yeah, did the whole thing. And I joined, that started when I was like 17, and yeah, and it got kind of like serious like the year after, like when I was like 18.
Did we ever play any shows together? I don't remember.
I don't think so. I think it would probably be right at the beginning of that. Oh, you know what? Did you guys play that big benefit at Manville?
No, we never got invited to play any of those.
Oh, sorry.
Hey, no, I'm still mad. All right.
That was me. It was either me or Tim Shaw that ignored you. I'm not sure.
Well, you know what's funny about that is like back then we were so ambitious to like do stuff and get a chance playing in front of people. We're like, you know, you're not even thinking that, oh, that's like a benefit for someone to help their lives. You're making it about you.
Of course. So, dude, I was all about that. I knew that life. I know that life.
No, that was the Manville Elks Lodge. That was the first hardcore show I ever went to. It was Candiria, For the Love of. I remember every band that played. For the Love of, Train of Thought, Blood Rust,
yeah,
Clubber Lang.
That's awesome.
I think that was it. Maybe Navi played. Maybe they opened.
Yeah, I think they did actually.
But I literally became all those bands. I became friends with every single person that played that whole show. But the reason we found out about the show was because of For the Love of. We met them at a rehearsal space, and we were like, "This is the greatest band I've ever heard in my life." And then we went to the show, and I was already a fan of Candiria because they used to play them on WSOU all the time. So it was.
Which rehearsal space was that?
Big Noise.
Oh, you met him? You met For the Love of at Big Noise?
Yeah, that was our spot. That's where we used to rehearse.
Yeah, that was their spot too. Yeah, Strength and all those guys used to always practice there.
We wrote awesome. We wrote like 3 records at Big Noise. Like the first, God forbid, records we wrote there.
What a beautiful, beautiful. For the Love of, when they came out, like absolutely blew my mind. Like that band. I remember a time when that demo came out. Like it just like hit me in that way. Like I couldn't take it. And me and my brother were blasting it in his car. And we got so amped up that we were stopped at a stoplight and both got out and just started fucking swinging and doing karate moves in like the middle of an intersection, just blasting For the Love. We couldn't control ourselves. There was just something about it. I still listen to that shit and like, and For the Love of, like, that ages well. That still gets me worked up, man.
It is the most influential band to God forbid of that entire scene. Like it was the first time, because the thing about them, even in hindsight, was that the musicianship was really a notch above 90% of the bands in that entire scene.
Yeah.
And they also, you know what? I'll probably play one of their songs on here so people know what we're talking about instead of us.
That'd be awesome.
So this is Doc. Gonna cut in real quick and actually play you a song from the band For the Love Of. This one's called Crawl to Hide, and it's the opening track from their Feasting on the Will of Humanity LP. It was originally self-released and then Ferret Records put it out. But I actually, just for the sake of this, I went on iTunes and rebought the record because for some reason I don't have the CD or the MP3s with me. So I got no problem supporting the cause. But anyway, check it out.
Listen on. This is the truth of it. Fighting leads to killing. And killing gets to warring. And that was damn near the death of us all. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Yeah, they were the kind of the primary influence, and it was the first time we saw a band that good up front, up close. You know, I would say like, yeah, I could listen to Pantera records, I could listen to Machine Head, but I'm not going to be able to go to a rehearsal and kind of be able, because once you see a band in front of you, you're like, oh, it makes it more realistic that you could get, I don't know, it's a weird thing, but you see, it's like kind of getting, maybe going to a film and being able to see behind the scenes and how they actually make the special effects and stuff. I don't know.
And especially them too, because Dan and John were like guitar for you, I could imagine, for a young guitar player, because those guys were so insane on guitar.
Well, it was just an attention to detail and understanding technique, and just that there were these elements of, because I don't know, being that, you know, at the time I was 16, 17, just the idea of making a band sound tight was like a it was like a tall mountain to climb, you know, like we were not trained in any way, so it was, you know, when we were bad, we knew we were bad. We're like, yeah, right. We're out there. And it was like, all right, we want to get good, but it's going to be some time. And we worked and worked and worked until we actually got good. But when you see a really good band, you're like, oh, let's just do that. What did they do? Why are they, you know, you can analyze it up close. Mm-hmm. You know,
and those guys were like so pro too. I mean, they were like,
they took it seriously.
Yeah, at a time when bands weren't doing a lot of the stuff that they did. Even with like the performance stuff, like, if a guy like Sean, the singer of For the Love of, wasn't such a kind of cocksure kid at the time, like, what if he had the balls to go up there with a fucking anvil and start smashing it at the perfect part when it hits the cymbal in the song, and like that whole like that performance aspect of stuff wasn't a huge part of hardcore, and I liked that. I thought it brought it to another level, and it maybe influenced a lot of those bands, like you're like Ink and Daggers, and you're like some bands kind of ran with it and just like maybe brought that performance element more into like hardcore. Maybe they're responsible for 18 Visions.
Well, I don't know if that's
one
true.
way or another.
I think we're a little skewed in that we kind of have the local bias where it was around us. I think if you go around that time, if so many bands didn't have a national presence, you were kind of hindered by your the regionality, really. So
Sure.
I remember when we first met the Lamb of God guys, and they would show us all these Richmond, Virginia bands that influenced them that never got out. And I feel like For the Love of in some way is kind of like that, where a lot of people just, if you weren't there, if you didn't get to see those shows, the record might not actually have it come across the way it was if you were actually there.
That's true. Do you think that thing that used to happen where like the scenes would develop really in sort of an insular way, where a small group of bands and a small group of kids would really feed off each other and kind of play each other's shows and challenge each other, and that sort of created like sounds, and it created scenes, created aesthetics? Can that whole thing even happen anymore this day and age?
Well, what happens now, I've noticed, is now the younger bands kind of have a sense of the business of it. So you'll have bands who come out and they'll literally they won't even have a band. They'll have a record they made on their computer, and they're thinking about making merch and about having a manager and a booking agent. They're so kind of, everything is, because the truth is that bands out of the quote unquote scene now have actual careers.
Right.
Like I never thought that. I feel like almost no one in our scene had any illusions or delusions about having it be a career.
Yeah, it wasn't possible yet.
It was the bands like, a band like VOD who was on Roadrunner, or even like a band like Madball. Like it almost seemed like they were playing a different sport, like they were in a different realm. But
even those guys, I mean, we were kids and we viewed those bands a certain way, but like I bet if the guys from Madball in the mid 90s were home for more than 6 months, they had to work.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like there was
like they were set.
Yeah, exactly. There was definitely a disconnect, but now I think, bands can look out there like, oh, Hatebreed, they have a career, and Bring Me the Horizon plays arenas, and Parkway Drive literally draws like 2,000 people a night.
Huge.
And they're not soft. They don't have radio songs. They're a fucking metalcore band.
Yeah.
So it's like, so people see that, but I think what you have definitely lost is regionality, right? So
but they have beautiful surfers' bodies.
They're attractive men. They're a really good live band, actually.
Yeah, they're fun. They're super fun.
No, but I think so. Like for example, like if you look at what God Forbid did, we were really influenced by all these bands from Sweden, right? So that Swedish sound, quote unquote, no one can see the quotes I'm doing, got kind of filtered through the scene, the bands. We were, bands like Shadows Fall and Unearth and all that. And that was almost a precursor to what happened, where you could be from far away and adopt someone else's sound. And then so there was a time when you had to be from Sweden to sound like that, but then you didn't. Whereas so the influence we got from the band, like to me, I found that there was a groove to the Northeast sound, right? Whether it's Candiria, whether it's Biohazard, whether it's Life of Agony. There was just something about that was common, whether, so we had it and E-Town had it, and even Dillinger, when they wanted to lay it down, they could,
Their breakdown parts.
Well, they understood it. Like it's a kind of language, but
came up with it,
but it comes from that, just being around that environment. Even Anthrax has it, because they were influenced by the New York hardcore scene and all that stuff. So it's definitely something where I don't know if that is a thing anymore, where people are really influenced by the immediate bands around them, as opposed to, well, no, now I have Spotify and I can listen to literally every band in the world and can be influenced by anything. And things are, and you have things like Live Nation, which has essentially created a network and a monopoly of venues, whether it's AEG or whatever, like, so these things get filtered. And I know there definitely still is a DIY scene. You look at bands like Code Orange and Nails and that whole kind of scene, like that's definitely kind of on the come up. And obviously I'm not connected to it as much as I was, or maybe in any way at all anymore, unfortunately, but I definitely know it's there. But I think the commerce aspect has become more kind of materialized, even someone could look at a band like Terror, that's literally been, a working band that has a career for whatever it's been, 15 years, whatever that band's been around. I don't even know how long, but someone can at least look at that, even if you're a hardcore band, and say, oh yeah, you can do that and have a career. You can see it. It's very immediate, I mean, hell, now you can even just go and hit a motherfucker up on Twitter and be like, hey, how did your band make it? And they can tell you,
It's true.
So
the mystery is gone.
See, the funny thing is, see how I came here to talk about you? We ended up talking about the scene.
Yeah. So what you gonna do, man? We're just talking.
No, I love it. So kind of going back to that realm, like how do you feel about Low End Theory now? Like what's your reflection on it? Did you think it was any, like, do you listen to it now and be like, well, that's do you have any hard opinion about it, or how do you feel about it?
No, I actually, and I know it might sound cheesy, but at some point or another, I fall in love with every record I put out.
Yeah.
And I kind of don't find it worth working on or putting it out unless I do. So, like, as if, of course, like, I listened to something I recorded, it's scary to say how long ago it is now, close to 20 years. Like, at some point, but so of course when I hear some of the parts and I hear some of the drumming, I go, all right, I'd maybe approach that a little differently these days. Or like, just some of the shit, I'll slap my head, I'll be like, Jesus Christ, what was I thinking? It's like ridiculous. So I'll still kind of like self-critique myself in that way. But I do listen to like records like that with like great nostalgia and fondness. I really do. I love that stuff, man. I do. It was so important to me. And actually, when I listened to the last Low End Theory EP, I still get mad about like how abruptly that band broke up, and at the time it broke up, and the fact that it never got its like fair shake.
Because I feel like
that bothers me still.
I feel like Jersey, and I guess you could kind of put Long Island in that same thing of like being ahead of the curve as far as the emo sound, or and which obviously exploded, but things were happening there, bands like Lifetime and Save the Day and all that stuff, and obviously the Long Island bands, Brand New and Taking Back Sunday and all that. Did you feel at the time like, wow, this thing is about to pop and we missed the boat?
I don't think as clear-eyed as we could say it now, because, it's a lot easier to say in retrospect. In that time, we were just being influenced by the bands we liked and playing the music we liked, and almost like we alluded to earlier in this interview, the idea that like some of these bands we were into felt really big to us, even though they maybe weren't, Like you even talk about Long Island, like Brand New and Taking Back Sunday. This is pre that. I mean, this is like Silent Majority, and this is bands like that. And to us, Silent Majority was like a really big band, because Silent Majority, essentially to me, like at the time, any band that was just like getting out of town and putting something out and touring was like a great success, you know? And so we felt like we were definitely part of a scene and part of something that was like new and awesome. But I don't think we had the wherewithal to know that we were on like the cusp of some bigger wave or something like that. Mm-hmm. Now I do. And now I realize like we were kind of like on some shit like early, you know, like before a lot of those bands were. But, you know, it's something that maybe used to bother me, but I think a lot about the way music is and the way art is, and you've seen it a million times now because you've been around a long time. Like, not everyone who's good makes it. Not everyone who got there early makes it. And more often than not, the band who stole from the pioneering band and kind of cleaned it up and made it a little better is the one who actually gets mad famous from it. And that's just like, it's just the way it is, you know? Like,
yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. And, you know, I feel like I've almost been on both ends of that, you know, like almost like missing one wave and then catching the next wave. And then, you know, and then you'll hear other people, man, why is this band big? Like on my last podcast, I had Mark from the band Suicide Silence on, and he was literally asking me like, why did you think your band got to this level? I'm like, dude, I don't look at those things in those terms. To me, there's no should have or what. It's just like, it just is. That's what happened, you know, and that's okay. There's nothing, you know, there's only an issue when you run into what your expectations, you know, if you're saying, well, I should have had this, I deserve, like me, I don't even believe in the word deserve. That doesn't mean anything to me. It's like just empty, but,
look, I feel like that perspective took some years to get that perspective, at least for me, you know, like to have the wisdom of like doing your own thing and feeling comfortable with it and not looking at other people's situations. And, you know, I went through that with the Low End Theory at some point, you know, in the second wave of the Low End Theory. You know, we were in New Brunswick at the time when Thursday, Saves the Day, and Midtown all came up. And at the time, every time we were playing with those bands at first, we were playing over them. We were drawing more locally. They were young bands. And we watched all three of those bands basically get signed, get out of town, start touring, and get bigger. And as much as those guys were my friends and I was rooting for them, there was a part of me that was jealous. And there was a part of me that felt like I deserve what they have.
Yeah. And that was almost like, you could almost say for this area, you know, for the emo or post-hardcore, whatever you want to call that, you know, that was almost like a mini Seattle for that. You know, there's all those bands, you know, the bands got really big, you know? And I can imagine how that, because that's what I was thinking about, was that I remember, you know, when we were doing our thing around that time, all the people around us were like going to college, and they never, like, people that were in bands, they were in bands and they kind of took it seriously, but it was always like a temporary thing. I think in their minds, they were very realistic about it. Whereas us, in God forbid, we were like, we have nothing else. This is it. We didn't go to college.
Yeah.
We didn't, you know, and we literally put all our eggs in that basket and went with it. And we always looked at it like every opportunity we got, even though we didn't expect it, we were just like, this is all we have, you know? And I think that's what carried us through. Were you ever that guy who was like, I'll just do this for a little bit and kind of move on? Or were you kind of a lifer from day one?
I think in reality, I've been a lifer from day one. I do think because of certain pressures from the outside and putting on myself, and from the type of family and the type of situation I come from, the decision to be a lifer maybe wasn't as easy. And I had scruples at times, about doing it full time without anything to show for it,
Don't you come from a house of learned doctors?
my father, yeah. I'm actually the only member of 2 generations of my family to not graduate college.
Wow.
He says he's just going to go into the family field, but you're a medical doctor.
Yeah.
No, sorry, stepbrother.
No, that's where I came from. That's right.
Yeah, no, but that was a real thing. I mean, like, my father's an educator, my aunt's an educator, my uncle's an educator. And I'm not just talking like teachers, like I'm talking like college professors and doctors and like real academics, where like college and academia is like really important to them. So as much as I did, and that was mixed with my European immigrant Jewish grandparents who, it didn't matter what you were doing. It was just about foundation and success, So I could go tell my grandfather that I was just playing in some weird state, some weird country or something, and just be like, oh, cool. You making money yet? Like, are you set? Like, you building your family, you getting things right,
There was one metric for what is success or what is you're supposed to be doing.
Just stability. I mean, they were immigrants, they didn't understand this idea of like, oh, I'm just going to forsake all security to fulfill my dream. Like, that just seems silly to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We were raised in American society where you get to kind of like, I don't know, float around and try in some way.
Well, I think that's a kind of a description of what life was at a certain time, especially. Were they did they flee from the Holocaust or anything like that, or
one of my grandmothers did? Yeah
So that's I think the way you judge what a kind of fulfilled life or I think anyone who comes from an immigrant background, especially with regards to America, life was so much harder probably in these other places that in a way they felt like if they didn't take advantage of what America had to offer from a financial standpoint, that they weren't fulfilling the reason why they came there. And
for sure,
so I totally understand that, but I also understand the idea that when life is not defined by desperation, that we can be a little more whimsical kind of in our pursuits and what, we're human beings are driven by needs, right? So it's like if you're thirsty and you want water, once you have water, you're not thinking about water,
right?
And that's the same thing. It's like once you have a roof over your head and you're not starving and you're not, all right, we're not gonna, have some war or anything, and life is generally stable, then yeah, you start thinking about the deeper elements of meaning beyond just survival, or like that. I think there's something about kind of the tradition in around the world, which is more family oriented. Like, all right, we have our family and our traditions and we keep it together, and it's there is something to that for probably most of the world. That's just how they operate, but if you look in all the kind of Western society, what's happening? People are marrying less, they're having less children, and that there is definitely some connection with kind of secular success,
sure.
Where people stop acting in those same ways,
Well, it's how you deem success, because I mean, I think if you're,
what do you mean prosperity, like in terms of, you look at Japan, you look at Australia, these are prosperous places, and there are certain, when you kind of detract the religious element, which is all about enforcing the traditions of marriage and family and procreation and all these things, of kind of continuing these traditions. But when those things, and I think there is something about the secular idea in the West, and especially look throughout Europe, where they're, even though they have, these countries are, they have a state religion or whatever, the people themselves are not very religious, especially in Scandinavia, etc.
Definitely. Well, I think the thing at that time was like, as much as that pressure was coming from that side, there was also a part of me that was realistic, not about music, but just about life, and like, I knew what a loser was. I grew up around a lot of fucking white trash dudes who had no futures. And I was also around music long enough that I knew a lot of dudes who spent their teens and their 20s working for something that they didn't get, and wound up in a place in their 30s like they were lost, and I guess in my head I did always imagine myself to like set myself up a little better than that. I'm gonna do this in a way that's like, I'm not gonna fall on my ass. I don't want to be fucking poor the rest of my life. I don't want to fucking scrape the rest of my life. And money had been such a problem with me that the idea of turning it into something that I could support my life from was really important to me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to fucking do it for free forever. That's a fact. And that was my gauge for success, was literally, I just want to support my life doing this and not doing anything else.
Okay. Well, like, I'd say like the last thing I kind of remember, with you before, like, I got super busy, it was kind of like just away touring and doing things, was you were playing with a band called The Killing Gift. When I went to, see you guys rehearse, I went to some of your shows, and and that was also with Alex, right? Who's also in Gaslight Anthem. What ended up happening with that band?
Well, that was same thing. We did a record, got signed and did some touring, and we're building a pretty good thing. And then we had some, you knew our old singer. We were young, she was young. Things got a little hectic at the time, and I think we just lost control of it.
And this was around like 2004?
Yeah, probably about that. Like, that's when that started coming to an end. And, it also, like, I think creatively, Alex and I and Risky, the guitar player, we had sort of this idea to have like Far or Hum or, Failure, like one of these kind of more heavy, groovy post-hardcore bands. Yeah. Like that kind of music with female vocals. And I think we found ourselves teetering on the Evanescence line. It's like a lot more than we wanted to.
I went to go listen back to it, and it's, to me, it almost there's that, the movie The Crow, right?
Of course.
Remember the female fronted band that's playing in the club? Like, it almost, like, I was like, oh, it could almost be like that, like almost like in that like kind of dirty alternative kind of thing. That's I was like, because I literally hadn't listened to it. I was actually amazed I could find, there's a video on YouTube. I don't know if you know.
Oh yeah, I do. I do. I put my cymbals unnecessarily high just to try and look cool.
Hey man, do it.
That's why I got no rotator cuff left, Doc.
Really? From high cymbals?
I did that dumb shit when I was young, trying to look cool.
Hey man, I used to have the guitar, down around my my nutsack to look like Slash, and that didn't do much for the left hand. But
do you do the flip around?
No, I never did that shit. Cause here's the thing. All right, I'm not doing no fucking move that everyone else does. All right, Doc Coyle is coming up with his own moves. All right, I've seen motherfuckers steal my moves.
Listen to you on some Ricky Henderson shit now.
No, I talk in third person with consistency. You know why? Because it feels good, baby. Like you're talking about somebody else, ain't you? I'm talking about the character, Doc Coyle.
I like it.
It's true, man. It's true. So all right, so that's where I got real busy. I feel like I didn't see you for a long time. After that, maybe like we'd run into each other at the Court Tavern or something. So how did you Gaslight Anthem get started?
From Killing Gift, like A to B, like that.
Yeah, because it's obviously some of the same members and.
Well, yeah, like at first, Killing Gift, we sort of like parted ways with Renee. Parker also left, and we had a new bass player, this guy Daryl, and we started writing songs and like rehearsing singers at the same time, and nothing really panned out. We practiced with a few guys, and we didn't really like it, but we continued to write songs, and that eventually turned into Spiro Agnew, which was our like kind of very visual, epic stoner metal band. So
I remember that.
Yeah, so Spiro Agnew came off of the end of Killing Gift, and we were kind of just doing that at the time. And it was sometime at the, towards the fall of '05, I got a call from Jay Smalls, who you remember, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay owned XOXO Records, who was doing stuff via Eyeball Records. And he told me that like he had been working with a guy, this one band called This Charming Man, and that they did a tour and they lost their drummer, and that they were looking for another one, and that Eyeball was signing him, and that they were going to put out a record and this and that. So, at the time, I was like sort of in that like exactly what you were just talking about. I'm like, all right, I had kind of rehearsed with a few bands. I almost played in that band, like the AKAs and like some random shit, just because I was sort of getting to that desperation point where I was like, I will do anything that like puts me on the road getting paid playing drums. Like, I don't give a fuck.
Did you have like another job at this time or anything?
I was working at the Targum. Yeah, I was working at the Daily Targum, the Rutgers newspaper.
Didn't everyone work there?
They did, and I was their boss, actually, at the time. At the time this was going on, I was actually like the night production manager at this newspaper. So I was in a salary job. Like,
did you ever like have that moment where you're like, I might have to quit doing music around that time? Because you were at that time, so like post Killing Gift, but pre Gaslight Anthem, where you were what, like 20, 25, 26? How old are you at that point?
Yeah. I was 20, 25, and almost 26. And yeah, I never in my head had the idea of quitting playing music. Like, that's never been an option for me. I'll always play music, but
did you feel like you were chasing something, or like being a little unrealistic with things, or?
Yes, I did. In all honesty, I thought that border between dedication and idiocy was starting to get more and more blurred. Like, because I respect somebody who's dedicated to something. I truly do. And I respect someone who's dedicated to a craft. But at what point do you have to like go ahead and manage your life and take care of something, you know what I mean? And actually like solidify something. And I did feel that pressure. So when I remember, it's funny, like at some point I told Alex that the Killing Gift was my last band. I was like, oh, this is my last one, my last try. And then I'm going to go do something else. And then like, I'm still doing a stoner metal band. And then this call happens. And then by the time I'm in Gaslight, I'm like, all right, this is my last band. So like I told you before, I'm like, I think in reality, I've always been a lifer and I'd never wind up doing something else. But like I said, I had mad scruples. Like, there were times definitely where but that's that's a theme in my life, regardless of what I'm doing, is I'm going to over analytically question and re-question everything I do about 100 times over. And So, I mean, there's like no decision I'll make in life that's made with 100% certainty. That never happens.
Mm-hmm. All right. So
at that point, so Jay gave me a call. He said this guy, and I'm like, okay, cool, interesting. And I listened, I believe, to a MySpace at the time of a few of the songs.
I like the way you say that, where you put the emphasis on the space. MySpace.
And, and I remember hearing it and being like, at some point in like the Low End Theory, I remember being like, all right, I'm into being in good bands, but I'm going to need a fucking singer at some point for me to be able to do this for real. And I remember hearing this Charming Man songs online and thinking like, music's a little mid-tempo for my taste, you know what I mean? But like this guy can really write songs, and he's got like a rad voice, and every single song on here is like got a hook, and I'm like, that's definitely worth like checking out. And I went up there. I drove up to North Jersey, where Brian and his wife were living at our bass player Alex's family's house, in this big house, and they were living together, and we were able to play in the basement and jammed with them. And it's funny, I was all like cavalier about it then, and I was like, oh, like Brian offered me like the job basically, like now, right away.
To play in Charming Man, or it was
this was to play in this Charming Man, yeah. And Brian offered me it, and of course I was like, yeah, I'll get back to you, man. Like like such a fucking dick. And I like had to go think about it and this and that. And I remember, it's funny, it was that whole crew, I'm like Luke Bodenstein's crew, like John Zajac and all those guys.
By the way, Luke is one of my best friends and one of Benny's good friends.
Old friends, yeah. So then they did this big Labor Day barbecue every year at Johnson Park in Highland Park, or Donaldson Park, I'm sorry, in Highland Park. And I remember deciding at that barbecue that I was going to like play with them. So it was actually at John Zajac's softball Labor Day barbecue, September 05, that I actually like called Brian and was like, sure, I'll do it, And then we had that band. It was an old guitar player, Mike, and Brian and Alex Levine. And we went in fairly quickly after that to try and record the first record for Eyeball. And things didn't go well. We weren't ready. It was rushed, and put us in there with a producer who, like, none of us were really accustomed to working with producers yet. And it was kind of odd. And it just didn't work out. And basically Brian was offered a deal that was essentially like, you can stay on Eyeball if you like fire your band, and we get you like a house band and you just like play this kind of way, And Brian kind of just like took a chance on the people he had and just went with it. And we left Eyeball. And when that happened, Jay was there with XO, just like, yo, I'm cool, I'll still put out the record. And not long after that, we did a tour, and the old guitar player Mike had to leave. And I knew Alex from, Killing Gift and Spiro, and I always thought he was great. I never wanted to stop playing with Alex, really. So I got him in that, and that's when it turned into Gaslight, and off it went.
So now, a lot of people that listen to this show, I've mainly had all these like metal dudes on here, and one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on sooner than later was to like diversify the roster. So if you motherfucking metal motherfuckers are listening,
I hope I'm filling your fucking affirmative action quota here.
Ain't no affirmative action. I need you, brother. I need you. No, but I want to. People don't. Some of the people that might listen to the show might not have an idea of how fucking huge your band is. This motherfucker told me, he's like, yeah, man, playing Radio City Music Hall. I'm like, okay, no, I guess that's how you living. All right, so you got hold on. I'm gonna ask some questions about how big your band is. Y'all got any platinum records?
No.
You getting gold records?
Not in America.
You don't have any gold records in America, but you got some gold records though on your wall from Germany. Where are they from?
UK.
UK. Okay. All right. All right. There you go. You got any Grammy nominations?
No.
No Grammy nominations, man. This is
Not one.
this is some old bullshit. But anyway, you all right. So after all this time, you get in one of those bands. All of a sudden, I start seeing at your shows, fucking Bruce Springsteen is playing with you, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
And you're playing these massive festivals, and you're doing all this fucking huge stuff. And you know, like I went and I wasn't, you know, at the time I wasn't really super familiar with the band. So, you know, I was like, go check it out and stuff. And it sounds like, I'm listening, I'm like, this is like grown-up music. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and I was actually like listening, I was like doing my research, I'm listening. Like the first EP almost reminded me of like Social D or something like that, like in that vibe. And like each, and then obviously the 59 sound, that's where things, you know, I think that's where most people make the Bruce Springsteen connection, just with the way it's produced, and obviously being a New Jersey band and that whole thing. And then listening to some of the newer records, it seemed like the band got more polished, you know, and kind of even whatever the first song off the last record actually almost sounds like could be like a grunge thing. So it's like there's a lot of evolution within the band. But yeah, it's like grown, like it's music that if you played it for someone's mom, they'd be like, yeah, this is nice. Where it's like, which is the complete antithesis to like all the bands we did when we were younger, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Was that weird for you? Like, did you feel like, oh, this is something different, or this was like, no, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get at it. Fuck all that old stuff. This isn't where I want to be.
No, it wasn't like, you know, the thing is, I've always been behind the music we made. You know, there was never a time where I was like questioning what we were doing. I always felt good about it.
Yeah, but did it feel like, because to me there's a big difference, like where you're like, wow, I'm finally, like when you're putting that first EP together, or maybe it was on the second record, I don't know, but where you're like, oh wow, I'm in a real fucking band. Like this is,
you know, when that happened for me, actually, Doc, was like, it was long before like the soccer moms started coming to see us. It happened when I was on tour roadieing for We're All Broken, opening a tour for Thursday. And Gaslight had just started, and we had a 3-song demo. And, you know, I was like the guy in all my other bands. Like, I booked shows, I was the dude in all my other bands. So I knew a lot of fucking people from booking shows, and I spent a lot of years calling people for help. You know what I mean? When Low End Theory, Killing Gift, like any of these bands I had needed shows in other cities, needed to put records out, needed distribution, needed any number of things, I was calling everybody I knew for help. You know, like that's the way it worked. Like that was the scene, you know? And Gaslight put out this demo, and I did the same thing I always did. I like hit up my people. I started trying to get shows. I started trying to do this. And right away, like I noticed something different, you know, like there was something different about it, where it was almost like I was getting the impression that it's like, oh, Benny's got actually like a new band, like for real this time. Like, you know, like I don't have to just help this guy because I like him. I actually want to because I like his band, which was fine with me. So I started picking up on the fact that it was just different. Like people were far more receptive to it than they had been to things in the past.
It had a natural momentum.
Exactly. And then I went on that tour, and, you know, We're All Broken played like first of 4. I just came to hang out, you know, they weren't paying. I was just like selling merch and driving and roadieing and just whatever. And I started kicking this demo around on that tour, and I get made fun of because some of the guys who are on that tour are still like, you know, road guys who you still see around a lot. Like, you know, like Jimmy, the tour manager, Mike Fry, like a bunch of guys I see all the time still, and they make fun of me because I was like on this tour fucking being a hustler, just pushing demos, trying to get my shit right. And I even noticed then, like, these guys like on this tour were like, yo, this shit's really good, and they were like stoked on it. And I kind of realized at that point, I'm like, this thing's got like, this one's like real, like, and this one like has a lot of potential. And I think I knew that, and I knew how special it was because of like how many years I had, kind of really like with that Sisyphean task, pushing the rock uphill, like, because I didn't have anything that like could get me what I wanted, sort of,
Mm-hmm. So you understood there was a reception that was different, but what about like on the ground? Like, when did the band start hitting in terms of selling records, having people show up at your shows? Was that a pretty immediate thing, or did it take some time?
Yeah, I mean, it was to us, it felt very slow and progressive. In the grand scale, it actually did happen pretty fast. But, again, it was like I was dealing with such a tiny sample size, like I had never been in a very successful band before this.
So you had really not too much to compare it to.
No. So literally, man, like, if there was a show that 10 kids were singing along at and $100 of merch was sold, I was like, fuck yeah. Like, that was good for me. That was like a big night, like, so at that point, man, when stuff started happening, literally like every step of the way was like just the best, every time it happened. Like,
did you notice, like, because of the scene I think we came from, and like I said, none of us had those expectations of anything. Did you notice like people treating you differently, or people like dick riding like that? Did that start to creep up at all? Also, you start hearing from motherfuckers you ain't heard from in 10 years.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I can't say that shit didn't happen. And I can't say that when Gaslight went on break, there's a lot of people I'm not hearing from as much, but that's real, man. Like, and that's, I don't know. I don't take that shit that hard. Like, the only thing I would take hard is like, because I like to think of that as people, being genuinely excited for you. Because I mean, really, how much can I give someone? You know what I mean? No one's like it has happened where I've been hit up for money, but like, I feel like for the most part, people are excited for me. I think the thing that would fuck me up the most is if like people like you had something to say about what I did. You know what I mean? Like, if I had to go back to New Brunswick and people are like, oh, Benny, you like played out your people to get what you want, or you did it some weird way or something like that. Like, I'm pretty like, I feel good about like the path I took, to like get where I'm at. And I think most people I know and most people who saw it got respect for me and know that I did it a certain way. And if someone had something else to say besides for that, I'd be pissed. And I have been pissed at a fucking couple people who said shit before. Like, because that I'm not going to fucking take. Like, I'm not going to go back to New Brunswick and have someone try to play me out. Like, that pisses me off.
Well, it's weird. I feel like in some ways, because at least from the heavier side of things, we were, God forbid, was one of the most successful bands that came out of that, to whatever degree you want to say that is, from that scene. I mean, obviously we never got as big as Dillinger. We never, there's definitely things we didn't get to, but in terms of what was going on, we definitely went, to go from, playing the M&M Hall to playing Ozfest and actually like selling records and people giving a shit and, being able to like pack the Starland and shit like that was, pretty crazy for us.
Sure.
But there's also what we were doing, there's definitive kind of, I think, limitations to where you can go. you know? So to me, to see, you know, it's still relatively underground, but to see what you did, it was like, it was, for me, it was just like, in a way, it was like it's like we sent one of our representatives out into the regular world. I was just so happy because to me, you were like one of the realest dudes, like, because I saw all the work you did leading up to that. It was like, it was just like, it's just, to me, it's just an amazing story. You know, that's the main thing about why I do the podcast, is to like tell people stories of how they got from A to B, or A to Z for that matter. And that was just the thing. It was like, wow, like one of the good guys actually won. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I felt. It was like, you know, it's definitely like, for me, like a vicarious success. Like, well, we're all winning, you know.
I very much appreciate that.
No, it's just amazing. And I don't know, like, and I guess the thing I was always that I didn't know, because I felt like it was you and Alex, like, when that band was first going, like, were you guys part of a scene? Did you break the band in like a scene, or is that world just a completely different vibe in terms of how you get out there and spread the word?
Yeah, I mean, at first we were, for sure. Like, there was a few bands local that we were playing a lot with. We were doing shows with like Scream Hello a lot in New Brunswick. Span the Kill Takers we were playing in the city a lot with.
Did you ever do like a Warped Tour or anything like that?
We did one like 8-day stretch of Warped Tour when we were on Side One Dummy, because Side One Dummy put out the Warped Tour records and were like really close with Kevin Lyman. So when we started doing well on Side One, they always pushed for us to do Warped Tour. We always pushed to not do Warped Tour. We always thought it was a bad idea for a band. And that's where, you know, you talk about where I come from and the place I got to. A lot of that, to his credit, had to do with Brian and the fact that he didn't really hold the same exact sort of like punk and hardcore scruples.
The guilt, punk rock guilt.
Exactly. And he had it, and he came from the same place, but he also had a very realistic idea of what he wants to do, and never put like limitations on where it could go.
Yeah.
And that was smart. It was really smart. You know, he never like was like, oh, I'll never sign to this, I'll never do that. He was always like, I'll do what happens when it happens, you know. It was and I had a lot more like, oh, I don't know about that. Like, the punk police won't feel good about that.
The kind of the appearances of things.
Exactly. And then fairly quickly, you know, our first record leaked online, and one of the people who grabbed it were a couple of the guys at the time who were working for like Vice magazine, like Ryan Duffy and this guy Jake. And they hooked us up with an Against Me show in the city, sort of like a secret Against Me show. And we played this show, and we got kind of tapped into that world because Jordan Kleeman, who was the tour manager for Against Me, had a small label called Sabbath, and they put out an EP for Gaslight. And, you know, we did a lot in Florida. We were playing with Fake Problems a lot. It was Chris Farron's band. And that became probably our scene a little bit, sort of like the fest, punk news, you know, like, yeah. I don't know if you could call that a scene, but like that's, you know, that definitely harvested us at the beginning.
Was it, did you guys kind of benefit from kind of the rise of like hipster culture and that kind of realm? I'm just saying in terms of like, to me, I guess sometimes I'm programmed to think about things in terms of markets. Like, all right, this demographic, these, you know, 18 to 25 people who live in, you know, I think of those things, and I'm just saying, like, to me, when I think about hipster culture when it really arrived. It was like that 2010 type, at least when it showed on my radar. And then like I'd have friends and they would like show me these bands and like all these new things. I'm like, where do you find this stuff? Like it's like a whole different scene of like the bands that play, like the bands that, like I said, play these festivals, play a rock band that'll play Coachella or something like that, or it's like almost under the radar, but it's kind of big. Like it's so alien to me. So I'm asking you to educate me on just
in that one. I do feel like one of the things that actually made Gaslight successful at the time we got successful is the fact that we're not hipsters.
Yeah.
And the fact that like,
even though your mustache right now you'd have a lot of people would argue with you, right? They'd be like, yo man, what's up with that Brooklyn mustache?
Yeah, Santa Brooklyn mustache. Shit comes from the 70s, bud.
Yeah, but that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to it's the remix.
Yeah, but listen, they're trying to do it. I got hair down to my ass under this hat. All right,
that's
I got
true.
my thing. I got my shit tight over here.
I'm feeling it. You should be in Stillwater. You know what I'm saying? Fever dog coming down my back room.
Wait, what would I'd only have one line though. I'm gay. That's his only line.
That's the drummer. The drummer.
Yeah. It's his one line.
I'm sorry. That is the fucking buzz.
But I actually like, it's almost funny that like
the anti-hipster band.
Like even the narrative that got created for us, like in the UK. I mean, literally, I think kids like think we like rolled up to shows all in like a pickup truck and like literally like unhinged our tool belts and walked on stage. Like that's how this idea of like real like working class New Jersey cats in this band that were successful. I think that's like part of the reason the people who like us, and
it was very very unpretentious.
Yeah, and honestly, and I think where we came from has a lot to do with it, and the fact that we didn't get any taste of success until we knew that it's really special to have it, and stuff like that, and and we're all like proper Jersey kids, like real like kids who had to come up,
Well, the word that kind of that when I listen to the band that I think of is Americana. I mean, that might sound, I don't know if that's, a proper term or whatever, but that's kind of what I feel when it just has like this, like this kind of, like I said, this kind of, it's the sound of throwback American authenticity, I guess. And
I thought we were just Northeast elites, though,
I mean, listen, you come from a house of learned doctors, so this has been established. All right, baby, you cannot avoid it. So the band is on a hiatus now.
Mm-hmm.
And what's like, is that scary for you?
It's been interesting, man. It's been an interesting ride.
Did you know that was coming?
Yes, it was discussed and planned, so it wasn't a surprise. And I was one of the larger proponents to do this.
Why?
I thought it was a good idea, and I think if Gaslight just continued as it were in the album cycle thing every 2 years and just going at it, I think we would have either done a really bad record or we might not even be around anymore. It just hit that time. Like, it was just like 10 years straight, nearly 8-9 years straight. In that time, we did 5 full lengths, all with I mean, it was 5 full lengths in 8 years.
It's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. It was a lot of touring. I mean, we never stopped, especially at first. Like, there were a couple years there where we were doing at least 250 shows.
Were you married then?
Not yet. No, not yet. The whole family thing has happened in the last couple of years for me.
You're with child. Are the other band members like starting families and doing that whole thing as well?
Pretty much everybody's pretty much in the thick of it. Yeah.
You think that will affect kind of the status of the band or what kind of moves forward if things do get going again?
No, I don't think so. You know, I think like everybody, I think that everybody, it's not like anybody's turning around and becoming an insurance broker or anything like that. You know, like everybody in the band is still totally committed to music and hasn't really gone off with that. So I think that's just more of an evolution thing. I almost think it's positive that everyone's almost evolving together. Because that way, like a unified set of goals and things can come into place again, you know? You know, there's a lot of reasons for this break. Not everything I'm willing to talk about.
I understand.
You know, in something like this, but I did know it was coming, and I am completely pleased about it. And I do think it was really smart for the band. And I think the alternative would have been far worse. All that being said, I thought coming home and not being in a touring band was gonna be a lot fucking easier than it was.
In terms
like,
of just spending your time, or like the making a living aspect of things?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. I mean, I was smart about it, and I've like handled myself where I didn't have to be stressed out too much. It was more a feeling of self, a feeling of being lost a little bit, because, you know, even prior to being a full-time musician, like I've always just been a worker, you know, like I've been on my own since I was 17. So like when I was home, I was working a lot, you know, I was just making money, working, partying, like doing my thing, staying mad busy. And this idea of like coming home and just like, whoa, like clean slate. Like I need to like restart some careers. I need to find some things. I need to do some things. I realized, like, as much as I thought I wanted free time and stuff like that, how bad I am with free time, and the fact that I need tasks and goals and things like that to stay happy and motivated.
Yeah, well, free time can almost be a burden in a way, because it's like if you're not using it well, you feel like you're squandering opportunities, and then you beat yourself up because you're like not doing the things that you feel like you should be doing. And I think the thing about the road that, you know, I've because I haven't toured regularly in quite some time. I've kind of toured here and there pretty much since like 2012. But is that the road, once you've decided you like touring, it's the best kind of problem avoidance apparatus that exists. And I think people who don't tour won't really understand it, because here's the thing about touring: you know exactly what you're doing every day, and other people tell you. It's like, hey, this is what time you load in, this is when sound check is, this is when you play, and it's like, once you've been doing it, it's like, oh, here's where catering is, here's where it's very predictable. And and you every day, like I said, there are very few jobs you go to where motherfuckers applaud you and scream your name. You know what I'm saying? You don't see the post office motherfucker. He puts a letter in the fucking thing, and someone's like, yes.
You know what? They should though, right? They should.
That's what I'm saying. And that thing is very addictive and it's very soothing, and allows you to kind of walk in this cocoon of, you know, you walk around like, you know, you're Mr. Big Dick, not for nothing. You feel it's a
you know, Doc, this is a part of it though that like I desperately don't want to think, but I do think, is like, I wonder how much of this, you know, is did I get used to my fucking ego being stroked all the time?
Yes, you did, motherfucker. Why are you even questioning that?
because I don't see it like that for real. Like
no one's above it.
I go out and talk to kids like after a show, and I feel an obligation to go talk to these kids because they paid money to see me work. And like, I go out there and I like try to be as human as possible and like have just conversations and whatever. And then I smoke a bowl and go to sleep. And it feels like this thing that's not so extraordinary to me. But maybe just subconsciously you get used to this, like this adoration. It's not something I ever seeked. It actually troubles me, the idea that this is something I could get used to and actually want,
Well, it's just that you have to, I think it's really important, because you said, oh, it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. You're one of people in a very, very small group of people that gets to do that, and actually people give a shit. And, listen, like, everyone wants to be a rock star, right? Like the word rock star is like they'll call that for anyone, right? If you're like a big time, they're like, oh, fucking this Dennis Rodman is killing the NBA. He's a rock star.
Yeah, that's true.
Sarah Palin is the rock star of the Republican Party. Like that.
Wait, who said that?
Well, I mean, when she came out, she was a big, she was that person of the moment. But it's just about that there's an idea about that. There's something about the way people treat musicians and concerts. And listen, I'm sure it's changing a little bit. Now you're probably better off being a fucking DJ than playing in a band. But it's just understanding that if you get to do that and you're making a living and people care, and the fact that, like I said, your band has made an impact where now you're a part of history. You're a part of rock and roll history. Your band matters. When they make documentaries and they write books, and you're a part of it, you made that big of an impact, and that's fucking special. And it's okay to kind of, it's not about puffing your chest out and talking about how great you are and talking in the third person like I do. That's my thing. But I guess it's just understanding, like it's not necessarily a definitive exceptionalism, but there is, in terms of like, yes, I am great and I deserve to be this because I am this and that, whatever. It's not about that, but it is about understanding I get to do something really special.
It's unique. It's still really unique.
Yeah, but I think the way you can kind of avoid that is you literally have to do the things that suppress the ego. See, me, I was a fuck up and cheated on my girlfriend and fell into a fucking depression for like 2 years and like was a mess. So my ego was defeated by the inertia of life. And I had to deal with myself and kind of tear down everything that I was and kind of build myself back up and do a lot of, but if you don't have some crazy event that kind of fucks you up, then, you got to meditate or you got to fucking do whatever it is but I think recognize it, that there is a character you become. Like me, I think if you spend more than a month on the road, you start to go a little crazy in a row. Everything past 4 weeks, you start, all of a sudden that bottle of Jack starts looking real nice. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying.
It's, you start.
And that's, that was part of like what I'm even talking about is like, it went like from wanting nothing else but that to doing nothing else but that for like 10 years to just like unplugging. And not only that, like unplugging right into like literally like owning a house, having a wife and having a baby, like all at the same time. And in that time, my mother died and my baby came like over 3 months early and spent like 95 days in the hospital. And this all like
shit got
happened
real
in conjunction with the Gaslight hiatus, when I'm home basically for the first time in 10 years without a job. And I'm just like, what the fuck? So it's been tricky, man. It's definitely been like an interesting emotional and physical journey I've been on the last year or so, for sure. But I've accomplished a lot and done a lot and I feel good about it. It's almost like one of those periods in your life where a lot about you is changing, but I'm not exactly sure what it is yet.
Yeah.
But I feel it.
Yeah, well, you're in it. You know, you're kind of sometimes you don't have a grasp on things in the moment. You it's only a couple years later that it all kind of you can kind of figure out what the trajectory was, or like I said, kind of putting that narrative of what was going on. But
and I haven't talked about what we talked about in this podcast for so long, and I haven't thought about it in a while, that I feel like I probably definitely missed a lot of details for you. But
well, that's one thing about doing things like this. You know, when you're trying to, especially on my show where I try and kind of encapsulate a career. Listen, if I was trying to capture every fucking moment, this show would be like 8 hours. Like it would take seriously. Like there's, every moment, every year of someone's life that they're, especially if you're doing a lot of different things, there's a lot of transitions. It's like so many things happen, man, and you're not gonna be able to capture it all. So I'm all about just getting kind of the high points and encapsulating all that. But before you go, I want to talk a little basketball. Benny, myself, and my buddy Luke that I mentioned, we have a little group text message going on where we talk hoops and we're talking about maybe getting an NBA podcast going.
We got it.
So let's talk a little NBA. You are a Brooklyn Nets fan. My condolences.
Rough.
How does one survive as a Brooklyn Nets fan?
Well, one thing I find comical is sort of like the new Brooklyn Nets fans getting in such a tiff about it, when me as an old New Jersey Nets fan, I'm kind of like, this is what we do, with the exception of like a 3-year period in the early 2000s. This is pretty much the Nets. Like,
no, we've had here are the highlights. You got Derek Coleman and Kenny Anderson. They were decent, right? They do better. Were they max
playoff appearances?
Couple 7 seeds or something like that.
Yeah, I don't even remember. I mean, those guys were even getting young for me. I mean, we had the. I mean, it was really those teams that came, and then I would say the post-kid teams with Vince Carter were still pretty good. We had a nice stretch there in the early 2000s, like a good 5-6 years, where even we dominated the Knicks, which I loved.
Yeah, so you had that run, and then you had basically the run right before, essentially when they traded for Joe Johnson, and they were good for like 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, essentially
right around 50 wins.
It was right around, it was that, and then when they made the move to Brooklyn, Billy King was told by his GM to make a huge splash, and between the Gerald Wallace trade and the gigantic Garnett, Pierce, Jason Terry trade, it pretty much bought us one playoff series victory where we made it to the conference semis, and crippled the future for about a decade. I do have to say on the record, and I talked to my boy Mike, who's my other big Nets fan, about this. We were on board for the trade when it happened. I was on board. I can't say that at the time I wasn't like, you know what? You re-signed Darren Williams. You got this. It looked on paper like enough pieces to compete in the East. It did. And just didn't pan out that way.
Well, I'll go on record that I believe it's the worst trade in NBA history.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think I realized all the picks they gave up, and the fact that now. So what are you saying? So what the pick this year is the swap, right?
And then next year is an outright.
Just an outright pick. That is it is. Kevin Garnett hasn't been on the Nets. Paul Pierce was there for 1 season, right?
Mm-hmm. 1 season. Garnett for 2.
That is fucking crazy. And here's the thing. At the time, because I remember because the Celtics played the Knicks in the playoffs that previous year, and Garnett was great in that series. And, Pierce was still pretty much Pierce, even though they lost. They clearly were not who they were. But Kevin Garnett I think he literally spent the rest of his remaining talent on that last Knicks series, because whoever showed up the next year was not Kevin Garnett. That was
you know what? He was pretty good, man. And I'll give it to Garnett. Like, he was Kevin Garnett for the Nets. Like, he worked so hard. He was so much fun to watch. He just was old. He was just a shell of like the player he was by that time. But I mean, I think the idea wasn't that you were getting Kevin Garnett in his prime. It's the idea that you had Darren Williams and Joe Johnson in their prime, and that people like Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce would be the ones that like actually can get those guys to do what they should do. Darren Williams ended up underperforming the length of his contract with the Nets. I think that's an aspect of it that's overlooked. Everyone just blames Billy King and blames the trade. I think the thing you should blame Billy King for the most is locking Darren Williams up to that large mega extension, because he's been nothing but a cancer to teams. I mean, he literally made Jerry Sloan retire. And then,
man, Jerry Sloan was 653 years old. Come on, man.
He had another 124 years in him, I think.
I don't know about that. He was,
but I think Darren Williams and his inability to be like the guy was probably the biggest problem.
Well, I think what was clear about that season was that Darren Williams and Joe Johnson were not leaders, even though and Brook Lopez, even though they were the best players, so Paul Pierce had to be the leader, and it was like I said, on paper, and I think there was, because who else you had? Then Allen Anderson was on that team, and then what's his name? Who's on the Warriors? Sean Livingston, and then Kirilenko. That team should have been really good, and I thought they were really good, but something just didn't click. And then obviously Brook Lopez ended up getting hurt. But
and there couldn't be a worse guy for Joe Johnson to play with than Darren Williams. Like, that's something, I watched Joe Johnson play for years. He was one of the only guys who lasted out of this situation. And that guy, I mean, he is a good basketball player, a very good basketball player. He just needs to be a role on a good team. It was the idea that like a guy with his kind of temperament just can't carry the load, and people hated Darren Williams. Like, his teammates hated him. They just didn't want to be around him. He was bad. And then he would do those Italian soccer player flops, like 4 times a game. Like, that's no way to win over New Yorkers. Like, he was just the wrong guy for the wrong city. It just didn't click, man.
Like I think Joe Johnson's the same thing. Joe Johnson's like a dude from down south who doesn't want to talk. Like, this dude who signs Utah as a free agent? Like, almost no one. Like, that dude was like, I want to go to the place where there's the least amount of attention and I could just be quiet.
No pressure.
He left Miami. He didn't want to go to Cleveland. He
didn't want
any of that. And that's why he
but
hated
to his
Brooklyn.
credit, I mean, I'd hate to disparage him saying he doesn't like pressure, because Joe Johnson might be the best like late game shooter in Nets history. Huge. He was literally called Joe Jesus here. I mean, like, Nets fans loved him too. So, I don't got a lot bad to say about Joe Johnson. That guy was a pro the whole time he was here. I fucking hate Darren Williams. That's another story.
So I guess you're not rooting for the Cavaliers to win the title then.
You know what? It's actually the other way around. I love LeBron James. I love Kyrie Irving. So I always root for the Cavs. I think it was a bad signing. I haven't heard everyone's like, great, they just randomly picked up Darren Williams. I couldn't think of a worse person to bring into your locker room. Maybe I could think of a worse one. I couldn't think of many worse ones than Darren Williams to bring into a late season locker room. Like, that guy's just a chemistry eater, man. Like, I do not think that was a good move. I think he's going to provide what they think he's going to provide. He's a good postseason player and he can create. So, he will help on offense, but I don't think he's going to help that team that much.
Well, you have to compare that to who they had. They had Liggins and some other
Kate
motherfuckers.
Felder.
I never even heard of. So, I mean,
Kate
literally,
Felder was a beast in college.
listen, LeBron James was talking about those dudes like they didn't even exist. He was like, we need a ball handler. We need someone.
Yeah.
And
There's two kids. There's two kids on the bench. Like,
yeah,
you know, sorry, LeBron, right?
Yeah, you don't exist. All right, so let's keep it real.
I love that about LeBron. I love it.
No, I think it's a big move because it, in some senses, you know, when you're thinking about the Cavs and that fifth guy and the other guard that's not Kyrie that's gonna be on the floor, you have to say who's more dependable in the late game situation. Is going to be Deron Williams or J.R. Smith? Probably Deron Williams.
You really think so at this point?
Yeah.
J.R. Smith was a beast in the playoffs last year.
I love JR. I think he's underrated. But what I'm saying is that, but he's also prone, and this is, you know, me being a Knicks fan, to doing one bonehead thing down the stretch that can lose you a game. He can win you a game and he can lose you a game. But what I'm saying is Deron Williams is a 5-tool player. He can do everything. He can shoot, he can handle, he can distribute. He's probably not the defender he was, and he's probably, I don't know if he's even as good as JR is now.
He's an average defender.
Yeah. I mean, JR, I think, actually has been a really good defender. But
he's been good.
But the problem with JR, he's been hurt all year. He's, you know, coming off injury. You don't really know what you have. So to me, it's, and even same thing with Bogut. They didn't need Bogut, but it provided like a safety valve. Like, oh, here's this tool, but now obviously they don't have him. He's out. But no, I think.
What did he play? 58 seconds. Bogut played.
Dude, that dude has the worst luck of anyone.
That's rough.
He must.
I mean, I don't. I think maybe the same thing that saved J.R. Smith last year could be something that helps Deron Williams now, which is like when you wind up playing with LeBron and you get into this system, you have a very defined role. You know what I mean? Like, and J.R. Smith knows exactly what his role is now. And Deron Williams with a like 15-minute a night role actually could be a lot more useful than when that much pressure is on him.
Dude, it's an arms race. And the truth is, if you're just talking strictly talent, there are really only, there's just, you know, you're probably not going to get a better guard off the bench outside of maybe like Eric Gordon or Lou Williams, you know, people of that magnitude coming off your bench. And the truth is, losing Delly, losing Mozgov, they needed another wing. And a lot of their guys are older, you know, guys like Richard Jefferson, Channing Frye playing probably a little more minutes in the regular season than you want them to. LeBron's playing, you know, that's why I love the Derek Williams signing. I think that's another guy that, you know, can run with LeBron and can kind of be an energy guy.
Well, we talked about this on the text. Like you were talking about Derek Williams as like serious. Like this guy's like a legit like NBA wing, and he's like not yet. You know,
well,
he's never proven himself consistently over time.
I would say he's. I think certain players are difficult to assess how good they are and what they bring. Like, I'll give you an example. Mo Spates is a guy that helped a team win a title, but in a vacuum, do you look at Mo Spates and like, yeah, that guy is great. That guy is one. No, you just, you know, it's all about being the right person for the right position. The problem with Derek Williams is expectations. He's a number 2 pick, so you expect he should do X, Y, Z. And I just don't think that's right. I think certain players can be used. I saw him play with the Knicks, and I saw him do really good things. And he's a guy who can go, he can get you buckets. You know, he's kind of probably a minus defender, but there's guys like that if you put them with a LeBron, you put them with a certain team. Look at JaVale McGee. JaVale McGee's been starting for the Golden State Warriors and doing great. A guy that's known perennially as a knucklehead. But you put him on a great team, and he can do a lot of great things. You know,
don't quote Shaq.
What did I quote Shaq? What's the Shaq?
I believe knucklehead. Wasn't that like Shaq's whole thing?
Well, no, I mean that's kind of clear. You know,
didn't JaVale McGee's mama got mad at Shaq, right?
She did. You know, but that's because Shaq's like, I'll slap you. You know, and
Far.
That's some. Here's the thing. That's some brother shit. Just talking shit. I'ma slap you. I'ma fuck you up. Yo, nigga, you see these hands? That's just some ignorant shit that people are still keeping. And what's funny is Shaq is like a co-owner of a team.
Yeah.
Like that dude, what I'm saying? Act like you've been there. Calm down. But I think Shaq just makes, like, I remember when Shaq and Scottie Pippen were dissing each other.
Oh yeah.
It was great. And Shaq did he did this thing where he had a picture of the old Sidekick phone, and it makes fun of Scottie Pippen, say he was just a sidekick.
It's funny though.
Yo, don't.
He's good though. You don't fuck with Shaq.
No, do not get in a diss battle, because Shaq is his Shaq fu as far as dissing is high level. So I do think that KG Pierce trade is the worst of all time, and I think it actually, between that trade and the Melo trade, even though I don't think that was nearly as bad, have changed the way trades are done, because now we kind of see the long game of the win now, for the most part, depending on what you give up, just doesn't work, and
it's got to be that balance, right? And then we've also seen how the straight like tank mode and trying to just totally rebuild through the draft, you need that to work to an extent, but you can't completely just build like that. You need other elements as well. Like how long is it going to take with Philly? Like, you can't take this long in a competitive sports league. It's just not.
Why not?
I don't know. I mean, this is something I think sports fans lose focus on all the time, is the fact that, like, we're literally watching a gigantic corporate entertainment industry, and like whatever hinders the entertainment aspects of these industries will be changed. And like what Philadelphia is doing, and the fact that an entire fan base was basically just told to fuck off for like nearly a decade. Like,
what are you talking about? They were in the Eastern Conference Finals like 5 years ago.
Okay, 5 years ago they've been told to fuck off.
No, they didn't. Listen, they didn't get told to fuck off. All right. I'm gonna break something down that sports fans. Here's the thing: most sports fans are fucking idiots. All right, I'm gonna put that out there. Who don't understand things. There's 30 teams. Okay, the likelihood your team is going to win is minuscule, because it's a league that's been dominated by dynasties. All right. 4 teams won the title in the 80s. You know what I'm saying? And Boston and LA won 8 of them. Okay? In the 90s, Chicago won 6 of the championship. Like, you're not, the likelihood you're going to win anyway is small. So stop going out there with all right, well, if we don't win, it's like, listen, they're giving themselves the best chance to do that, because the point is, what's the point of being like Atlanta and being a 5 seed every year for 15 years, but never breaking through? Is that better than saying, hey, we're just going to suck until we get the one guy, or the couple guys, and we're going to give ourselves the best opportunity to do that?
Well, what I'm saying is that I do agree that people like the Sixers are doing the smartest thing they can do under the current system that is in place. Here's something I got to ask you, and it's because of basically what I find to be the failings of the drafting system, is why are we still drafting? Like, is it weird to you that a grown man in his 20s who just like did X amount of things for their entire life to get to a certain point is given zero freedom about where they decide to work and how they get to dictate their salary? Isn't that an odd thing?
Well, it's not. Well, that's not totally true, because they can go play in China, they can go play in Australia, but that league has the most money and the best opportunities. So they're at the mercy of the league. But I hear what you're saying.
I even mean inside the league. Like wouldn't a free market be able to dictate this a little better?
Well, it is a free market, just not within the NBA. So it's like I said, you can go play in another league.
No, I'm talking about inside of the NBA.
Oh no, because here, the reason why that is, and it's the same with most sports, is they believe in these are billionaires who believe in socialism for them and capitalism for you, right? So when they're in the game, they want an even playing field, right? You know what I'm saying? But in the real world, they want no. If you fuck up, we ain't give you nothing. Go fuck yourself. They believe it is basically everything's equal. Everyone has equal opportunities. That's how they want. I don't think there should be a salary cap. I'm totally down to get rid of the draft. But it definitely will create. Certain teams will never have a chance because no one who would go to Minnesota. Think of a black man who's 19 years old, 20 years old, going like, yo, bro, I'm going to Minnesota. It's hot. You know what I'm saying? Go over to First Ave where Prince used to. They don't even know who Prince is anymore. These young childrens. All right. I'm just saying.
Well, I mean, but like, I thought that era was over because of, the cable stuff, the satellite stuff.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Your Oklahoma cities, your things like that can actually compete with the major markets where they used to not be able to.
But you still have to live in Minnesota. I'm just talking about the fact that some places are dope and some places are not.
You don't think Karl Anthony Towns is a fan of cheese curds?
I mean, he probably is now, but it's not like he no, I'm sure a lot of these people go there.
I know what you're saying.
Listen,
I think you're right.
I bet if you're a young guy and you get drafted high and you're just probably so fucking happy just to be in the NBA and you just understand, I don't know where I'm going to end up, or who's going to have the high draft picks and you have an idea, I'll probably go here and whatever, you just deal with it and you go someplace and you learn to like it, Right. But when given the choice, people want to be in LA and they want to be in Miami and they want to be in,
But what if like the free market aspect of the business dictated it where, okay, like you're a point guard, LA stacked their team, New York stacked their team. Oh, cool. Kevin Garnett owns a team in the middle of the country now and there's no salary cap anymore and he'll give me $200 million to come be King Dick in Minneapolis. Like that's where if you allowed the free market, I think some of these things could potentially fix themselves.
Well, I mean, that's kind of how baseball is, right? They don't have a salary cap. I mean, I haven't followed baseball really.
They don't have a hard cap, but at the same time, the Yankees have been paying $30 or $40 million back to the league every single year for being over the soft cap. Mm-hmm. So
if you can afford it.
It's a redistribution system in baseball where if you go over the cap, you pay a penalty and the penalty is redispersed among the remaining teams.
Well, my main problem with the hard cap is people like LeBron James, people like Kobe Bryant, people like Tim Duncan, they get hurt. They will never. LeBron James will maybe in his final year, but he'll never get market value. LeBron James is worth $50 to $100 million a year.
100 million easy,
right? So he'll never get that. And then you have situations where Kobe went and maxed out as much money he could get, screwed his team over, but he was saying, "Well, I'm worth this much," even though he's probably worth more. Whereas you had people like Tim Duncan and Dirk Nowitzki take a pay cut because they cared about winning. But why should they have to take a pay cut if they're, but the system is set up where these guys have to be the ones to sacrifice, right? Mark Cuban doesn't have to sacrifice.
Exactly.
Whoever owns the Spurs doesn't have to sacrifice, but all these guys are taking less because they want to win. But that's the system that they have set up. Like, listen, the fact that baseball players, like pitchers, are making more than NBA players, working every fifth day. You know what I'm saying? Motherfucker, I'm sorry, yo. If you could look like Babe Ruth and still play the sport, it ain't that physically demanding. Let's comparatively. That's all I'm saying. I think the amount of work and what these guys do, they should definitely get what
What about
they deserve.
Oliver Miller? What about Oliver Miller?
Well,
Or
that
or
didn't-
Brian Big Country Reeves?
Yeah, well, that didn't go so well down, did it? These are the cautionary tales of the league. Big Baby is not in the NBA right now. Hate to break it to you.
He did all right though. He had a
No,
decent
he maximized.
He won a ring, right? Did he win one with Boston?
2008.
Yeah.
2008. All right, you got any predictions for the end of the year? Any concerns? What's going on? Is it a foregone conclusion once Kevin Durant comes back?
I actually think things got a lot more interesting in the last few weeks. I think the Warriors are a little exposed. I'm not too concerned about them, especially if Durant comes back, but this idea, it's always bothered me since the end of last season, this idea that you can gut a bench and a team starting 3 and just like move on business as usual isn't the case. And it works when you add Kevin Durant, but when you take Kevin Durant out, that team is thin.
Well, I think it also underscores how good Harrison Barnes was for them, and
exactly.
his skill set, being able to guard multiple positions, hit the 3, that there's actually not that many of those guys in the league either. And even though Kevin Durant is a much better version of that sure. When you lose that, and I think honestly, any of their top 4, if any one of those guys is out, I think they're going to suffer dramatically. So
who can actually beat them in the West?
I think the Rockets can, because I think the Rockets can outscore them. They're going to shoot more threes. They'll probably shoot more threes than Golden State. And it's just a numbers game,
Is Utah real?
I haven't watched them enough to say so. But they have to beat if they're in the 4 or 5, they have to beat the Clippers first. But I think Houston can go gun for gun. And I think if it ends up being San Antonio, Golden State, I think Golden State is going to kick their ass. I think.
Yeah,
I just think athletically, it's going to be interesting. Because the thing is, LaMarcus Aldridge has to destroy them. He has to just because you saw it happen last season. Those first few games, he was averaging like 38 a game, killing them, and then he sucked for the rest of the series.
Yeah.
Where they've been exposed in the last few years has been athletically, that they couldn't stay on the floor. They couldn't keep up with the Clippers athletically. They couldn't keep up with the Thunder athletically. And that's one thing that the Warriors, they just move so fast, and it's so lightning, that I think in some ways San Antonio benefits from the fact that outside of the top 7 or 8 teams, the league is pretty weak, and they win every single game they're supposed to, and so their record is impeccable. But once you actually get down to a series, do the same thing still work? So it's going to be. I think Houston has a better chance because of the way they play. That it's whatever. It's going to be 130 to 140 every game, and they can now, especially now they have Lou Williams. They're going to have
sweet Lou. I love that pickup.
Which is,
I think, I still think that I said it. It was actually my preseason prediction, and I still kind of think it now. I think that if anybody can take out the Warriors in a series, it's the Clippers. I know people kind of lulled to sleep on them the last month or two because Griffin and Paul were both going back and forth being hurt. But that team going into the playoffs healthy is extremely dangerous.
They've lost to the Warriors 11 times in a row by like 15 points a game.
I know. I think they have something though. I think in a playoff series it's going to get weird.
If they can win the first round, then they'll play play them in the second round. So we'll see. But I also believe that if Cleveland is healthy, they probably have the best chance, because I love all the new additions, but they have to be healthy. And Actually, one thing interesting to look at, San Antonio might actually be able to get the 1 seed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to look to the end of the year, and that could be a situation where if they're in the conference finals and they have home court advantage, that's something that it's been 2 or 3 years where they've always had the home court advantage. So that'd be something interesting to look at. Anyway, buddy, really want to thank you for coming on. It was a long one, but I like it like this.
Hey, Doc.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on your podcast. That was fun.
Of course, man. Anytime.
Step out into the city, no one to find you or recognize, as your black heels kick out the beat of my heart in perfect time, singing la 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 la. Look at you saving my life, singing la 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 la. Tonight you're saving my life, singing la 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 la. Leave it on the end of the night, singing la 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 la. Tonight you're saving my life, yeah.
And that was Stay Vicious by the Gaslight Anthem from the last album they put out called Get Hurt, which came out in 2014. I want to thank Mr. Benny Horowitz for coming on the show. I love that dude. He's truly one of the good dudes out there, and it's pretty amazing when you have friendships for this long, spanning multiple decades, and and you realize things change, but some things don't change that much, and it's really great to still have a nice relationship with him. So thanks again to him. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it so much. Thanks to Jabberjaw Media for bringing me into bringing the X-Man into their network. I think things this year are looking up. We're looking forward to it. Anyway, You guys be good. Mamba out.
This is the Jabberjaw Podcast Network.